Although we've won all these awards and been billed as quite a kind of sexy VR or AR company, at heart, we're really sort of quite a boring data or AI analytics company, really, trying to capture as much unique insights into how people perform in training and predict how they're then going to perform in real life, and give the learners unique insights into their performance so that they can better themselves.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the VocTech Podcast. This episode is supported by Ufi VocTech Trust. On this episode of the VocTech Podcast, we are talking to the inspirational Dr. Alex Young about the power of immersive tools to enhance learning and improve performance, especially in socially distanced settings. Verti were nominated one of Time's Inventions of 2020, so listen in to find out why. At a time when online learning is getting an online bashing and not always truly representative of the best of what technology and people have to offer, Verti is a refreshingly simple yet ambitious reminder of what is possible. Listen in to hear why snowstorms can be responsible for amazing innovations, why the future of immersive technology may be all about the data and can be used for teacher training, healthcare and retail as just a few examples, how to arm yourself with virtual mentors for leadership development by reading biographies and autobiographies, and why vocational technology is more about co-creation than just about SAAS platform business models. Okay, here we go. So this is very exciting because it's the start of 2021 and I'm here with Dr. Alex Young, who is the founder of Verti, for our first recording for this year. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much. I feel very special being the first of 2021. Hopefully we can make it a good one to start the year.
Absolutely, going to set the bar. For those listening in, I'll just give a little background about Verti. So Verti is a tool for immersive learning, which uses research into cognitive decision-making under pressure and an immersive video platform combined with augmented reality to help professionals prepare for real-life high-pressure environments, including surgery, sports, emergency response and military training. And last year, Verti helped train NHS staff at the first peak of the COVID crisis, and have also worked with schools and universities, including across Bristol, Cambridge and Liverpool med schools here in the UK and also others in the United States. So Alex, you started out as an NHS trauma surgeon. I wondered if you could give us a sense of your own learning process from school days to those within the medical profession and then finally to setting up Verti.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and hopefully this will be entertaining for anyone listening because I'm very weird. So I'm originally from the northwest of the UK, and I've probably got some sort of predisposition to kind of education. So my mum is a now retired school headmistress from a sort of all-girls school in the northwest of England, and I grew up really sort of interested in doing something practical that could help people. Which drew me towards a career in medicine. I guess kind of alongside that at school, very interested in sciences, very geeky, big sort of video game nerd, but also had this weird spin with sports. So I was very, very sporty. I loved everything to do with kind of teams and, bettering yourself, whether it was in sort of sports or academia. And so kind of those interests led me to pursuing a career in medicine and specifically orthopedic surgery, which I was quite fortunate in the trauma and orthopedic surgery, which is kind of hips and knee replacements and fixing fractures and emergencies, was one of the first things I actually saw when I did sort of medical work experience. And kind of that ability to see a problem via an X-ray, whether it's a broken bone or arthritis of the hip, and then be able to do something practical with a team like you do in surgery to immediately, benefit a patient's mobility or their work-life balance, whatever it is, just really, really sort of spoke to me. So ended up going to Bristol Med School to do that. And then as well as sort of having an interest in sports and academia, the other side of my family, my dad's side, my great grandfather was a sort of a shipping magnate back in sort of the 1920s, 30s, and ended up being kind of the Lord Mayor of Newcastle. So I've probably also got some entrepreneurial DNA there, which kind of came out in med school when I set up a couple of education businesses, some that did sort of in-person training for doctors and nurses and organised events and things like that. And then a subsequent one which did digital teaching and training around exams for doctors and nurses, because as you might know, doctors and nurses have to sit a ton of exams, which are super expensive, all the way from kind of undergrad to, well into their postgrad career. And then, at that stage, I also pursued a kind of master's in surgical teaching and education, and did some other kind of quite geeky things to sort of satiate my interest in education. And then didn't really ever envisage leaving healthcare, I suppose. The businesses I set up, all touch wood, did very well, but they were always kind of side hustles, and I sort of coded them or built them around my NHS training, literally being a bit like a kind of caricature of an entrepreneur. So coming back from my night shifts and, doing some pretty terrible coding skills, or, teaching myself how to do sales and things like that. But with no real desire to leave medicine until round about kind of, 3 years or so ago. And I'd got to near the end of my orthopedic training, very lucky to train in the Bristol region, which had kind of, I think, accelerated where I was at. And I could do sort of a lot of the what's called indicative or kind of required operations that you're meant to do for your sort of grade of your postgrad training. And then went over to the US to do a fellowship in the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York, and ended up getting stuck in a snowstorm in Manhattan and basically trapped in a hotel for 48 hours. That gave me an opportunity to kind of reflect on, where I wanted to be going and what I wanted to be doing, and kind of had this idea for Verti, really with the kind of mission and focus, even at that stage, to think, how can we actually scale in-person, face-to-face experiential learning, and how can we make it more data-driven? So again, going back to the things that always interested me, like teamwork skills, soft skills, leadership skills that drive a lot of organizations, not just in healthcare, but in any type of corporate setting forwards. The way that I sort of received that training in medicine was always either using actors and role play, or just basically learning on the job, learning from different doctors or nurses or people I kind of encountered serendipitously. And the problem with that was it was serendipitous. There was a lot of variability, both in the training delivery and in the feedback that myself and my peers received. And if you think about sort of human factors or soft skills or non-technical skills or whatever you want to call them, like communication, especially in healthcare, that's a massive factor that plays to patient experience. So around about 70% of complaints against hospitals or doctors or nurses can be attributed to some form of poor communication in the patient's journey. But it's, there's no way to actually predict if someone is, a really good communicator or a poor communicator, other than role play and kind of subjective feedback. So, if we were doing a kind of communications session, Sophie, it might be that we are practicing with an actor, and there's a third person who's observing us and saying, yeah, I think, your eye contact's good, or the way you explained that diagnosis, or the way you had that difficult conversation with an employee was okay, maybe do this next time. And it's not very data driven.
I remember you're taking me back to doing difficult conversations training or something like that, where we had an actor come in, and it takes some time out of your day, and you can't really forget the fact that you're in a sort of made up situation, I suppose.
Exactly right. And for organizations, it's incredibly expensive as well. So if you think, in the healthcare setting, or for things like sales training or customer support training and things like retail, you've got to actually, find actors or role players or spend money on an external organization who provide those. And then you're kind of relying on the kind of curriculum and the teaching methodology behind that. And as you mentioned, you're also kind of pulling your employees off their actual jobs. So you're losing quite a lot through productivity as well, and you're not really collecting any data. And those tend to be like episodic encounters, i.e. you might have like one of those a year or once a month.
Yeah.
And then people's skills kind of degrade. Around that point, what we set out to do with Verti was to create this cloud-based system. And I've got to say, at the time, although we've won all these awards and been billed as quite a kind of sexy VR or AR company, at heart, we're really sort of quite a boring data or AI analytics company, really, trying to capture as much unique insights into how people perform in training and predict how they're then going to perform in real life, and give the learners unique insights into their performance so that they can better themselves, and also give their kind of trainers or educators insights as well. So we can kind of pop people into, as you mentioned, video-based training, which might be, again, simulating kind of role play experiences or simulating an operation, or the human factors of, being involved in a team. Or we can put them into these kind of computer generated environments with artificially intelligently kind of controlled avatars that you can communicate with, you can practice on them safely and repetitively, all really to kind of reduce that variability in training and standardize things for the future. And really, I think that's the bottom line of what we set out to do. We really want to transform how the workforce of the future and now, prepare and train, because we feel that, people in any organization are the most important thing. And if we can improve human performance, as we say, we can have a massive impact on companies, on economies, and on, patient care in healthcare, or the end kind of consumer's experience in sort of retail or corporates.
In my introduction, I mentioned that Verti helped sort of train NHS staff during the COVID crisis last year, which is obviously ongoing. Could you talk to our listeners a little bit about, how that came about and, what you developed and the kind of outcomes of that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's interesting. The start to 2021 is you just sort of dropped in two kind of crazy things that have happened already, and it's only sort of whatever it is, week 2 in January. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. Anything really where it's kind of an infrequent event, and we hope that event at the Capitol building will be infrequent, but very, very hazardous. They're the type of things we're trying to repetitively teach people that they perhaps couldn't prepare for normally. But yeah, I mean, I think reflecting back on 2020, we've been very kind of grateful and humbled that we've been able to sort of help a lot of the people that we work with in healthcare around this kind of black swan event and the coronavirus pandemic. So yeah, interestingly, kind of this time last year, I was out in Los Angeles with one of our customers, Cedars-Sinai Hospital, who we were just kind of rolling out some further training modules with, and that was actually going to be around new doctor and nurse induction orientation training, where it was normally sort of done in person and was very expensive, and we were kind of reducing the time and cost of that, and the kind of knowledge retention for Cedars. But then suddenly, California went into lockdown, and people were no longer able to come into what's called the simulation centers in healthcare. So, if anyone's not familiar with training in healthcare, it's either done in the postgraduate setting in these specific buildings called simulation centers, which often have kind of mock-ups of operating theatres or patient wards, and sometimes they use mannequins or they use actors. And you've got these fantastic simulation staff who are very creative and basically kind of, mock up these scenarios and simulations and make them as realistic as possible. However, that was then very, very challenging. And specifically around COVID-19 in healthcare, you probably saw and are seeing, certainly at the moment in the UK, there are lots of new skills that people have to take on that are outside their normal kind of working practices. So whether that is having to just put on protective equipment and understanding what type of protective equipment is appropriate for different types of patients, or whether it is, the practical use of things like ventilators for staff who might not use them every single day.
Yeah.
And even at the moment, as vaccines are rolling out, I actually had a conversation with an education lead this morning in an NHS trust, where she was telling me the last time she'd sort of vaccinated people was sort of 20 or 30 years ago. So she was now having to kind of study up on how to do intramuscular injections and things like that. So we were then able to kind of take a lot of that in-person training, digitize it, and quickly roll it out to frontline healthcare workers, mocking up these sort of simulations that people could access on demand, and that the training staff could then track and look at who had done it, what their weaknesses were, and how much of the workforce was basically kind of upskilled around that. And that then led us back in the UK to picking up an award through something called NHSX, which is the NHS's innovation arm, where we looked at translating that into helping carers, people who were in the kind of care side of patient care, helping them to understand how to put on protective equipment. And yeah, I mean, we were super humbled to be able to assist with that. We did a little bit of research around that NHSX project, which basically showed that using our system helped improve knowledge retention around protective equipment use by upwards of kind of 200%, which was awesome. And we did that very, very quickly, actually. And then probably the coolest thing, or one of the cool things that happened to me last year, was completely out of the blue, because someone I think saw that story. We ended up getting featured on the NASDAQ tower in Times Square, even though no one was there to actually see it in person because everyone was locked down. But we've got a nice picture of it.
Yeah, bittersweet. Yeah, I saw the image. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of questions. So one is, in my previous life, I ran in 2008 an event called the Mobile Healthcare Industry Summit. And this was sort of around the early days of, I suppose, digital healthcare and, smart pills and health databases and this kind of thing. And it strikes me now that, recently our 9-month-old, we had a sort of viral rash, and we were a bit concerned whether this would be the dreaded COVID. So we had a test, and we also had a video call with our local doctors. And it struck me that the local doctors were using a pretty generic consumer piece of video conferencing kit, and it made me think, where you previously had the promise of a niche industry sector intersecting with digital. The reality is people pick up and use tools which are freely available, hopefully secure. So I wondered what your thoughts were on that, and kind of what's needed to achieve scale for some of these sort of solutions and technologies, and whether it's about having a sort of niche sector industry, or whether it's actually just about technology being used in ways that are practical.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic question, Sophie. I mean, obviously with my kind of geek entrepreneur hat on, I keep kind of, interested in everything else that's going on within healthcare outside of kind of education as well. And I think certainly during the, from kind of probably March of last year with the coronavirus lockdown in the UK and internationally, a lot of organizations that traditionally might have been a little bit slow moving, like healthcare organizations in particular, because they're slow moving because they've got to make sure that things, as you say, are secure and they're benefiting patients, and technology is not kind of delaying or slowing down sort of frontline clinicians in what they do. So I was really interested in seeing a couple of reports from the NHS around the current adoption of things like telemedicine services, which I was absolutely astounded by, were so low. And I was looking at, some companies that had raised, hundreds of millions in some cases of funding, and they only had around about kind of 20 NHS contracts. And I think that's very much a kind of implementation and winning people over problem. And there's a wider conversation, I suppose, there around any type of technology in any, being used by any organization, that there needs to be not only a proven use case, a proven benefit, but you have got to kind of educate the industry and the sector. And one of the ways you do that is through showing them data, showing return on investment. But specifically to answer your question, my personal opinion on this is it's all around the people within these organisations. So we've been very, very fortunate to work with just some really, really innovative customers from a very, very early stage, whether that's in the NHS, whether it's in the US in healthcare, whether it's in bigger kind of private corporate organisations, really with a focus on how we can sort of help them meet their goals and improve their training. The specific point about telemedicine actually. And again, specifically the case you mentioned there with a rash on a young child. I think the other bit we've got to remember is it's very stressful, as I'm sure you'll attest, for parents and for any patients when they're trying to get seen by a doctor or a nurse in the current climate over telehealth, because you don't have that rapport with people. You can't sort of go in and fully get checked out, and there is an education piece to be done there for the clinicians to make sure that their soft skills are as good as they can be when they're delivered remotely via telemedicine, and also probably a piece around patient education, so that people can be sort of empowered to understand what the limitations of telemedicine are and understand when they should be going into an emergency department and when they should be seeing a GP. So I think there's just a huge amount that still needs to be done around the education of both providers, patients, and everyone involved in that kind of pathway. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm going to be very interested to see what sort of sticks around after coronavirus and things start getting back to normal, because I would hope that people have seen the benefit of things like telehealth in augmenting their existing practice. I don't think it should ever completely replace in-person, face-to-face, certainly examination, because it can't. And that kind of human piece of seeing a patient, understanding their needs and getting a full 360 opinion before you make your diagnosis. But I think for certain things, it can help to unbottle some of the bottlenecks within the healthcare system and can save money. And I hope that the NHS and other people kind of look at that in detail, as I'm sure they are, look at the financial savings and look at how it's been implemented and take that forward and continue it on after we get back to normal.
Absolutely. And I mean, my experience of that on 2 occasions was, it was really convenient. The soft skills of the GP in question were absolutely fantastic. And, it just, improved our confidence in the situation without us having to make a trip to the GP clinic. That kind of comment also made me think about the technologies you're using at Verti as well. So I know, there's a whole spectrum in immersive technology, whether that's augmented reality up to virtual reality. What's kind of your thinking around the use of technologies for sort of simulated learning? And I suppose that's in the context of, over time, the technology of virtual reality, the cost of it is coming down. And this year, you've got some interesting things potentially on the horizon. So, whether Apple releases some new technology or devices around immersive. I just, wondered, with your geeky hat back on, what you're seeing in that space and kind of where you find the tools useful in terms of access to training, and then the immersive element of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just kind of taking a step back before I get kind of too excited with what's on the horizon. And our sort of tech team, who are all based in Bristol, are all games developers and are fantastic. And there's a ton of stuff we've got sort of in our pipeline. But your question just kind of actually reminds me of a fantastic interview that Jeff Bezos did at the beginning of kind of Amazon's career. I think it was sort of after they did their seed round or Series A, and he's an interviewer sort of asked him and said, isn't Amazon just a fantastic online shopping place that uses the internet, and isn't it a great use of the internet? And he Bezos sort of just immediately replies, internet schminternet. I think is his comment, or something to that effect. And he says, actually, you know, we're a distribution business. So what if you look at what Amazon has done, it's actually the setup of these distribution centers doing next day delivery, which is the bit that's completely transformed to the point where, you know, ironically, during coronavirus, the bit that people went crazy about was, you know, I can't buy any gym kit online because it's sold out, or, you know, next day delivery is not possible because of some of the precautions. And that's kind of, I guess, you know, how we approach what we're doing. We're very kind of, or much more, I should say, you know, outcomes focused and thinking about how we can help our customers than trying to, you know, push forward a specific type of technology. So whenever we start an engagement or partnership with a customer, we always think, you know, okay, what are you trying to achieve? What are your bottlenecks within your within the education and training component of your organization? And how can we best help? And actually, you know, can we help? Because what we provide isn't, you know, a panacea that's going to completely, you know, change an organization every single time. We know exactly where it works and where it's most useful. So we do a kind of lot of like offline sort of strategy with our customers before we even do anything. That being said, the really interesting things that we see kind of on the horizon at the moment are, and getting back to sort of our mission, which is to sort of make experiential education affordable and accessible for everyone. I think just that ability to scale in-person training and collect unique data that even when face-to-face training is done isn't collected is just so powerful. So, you know, we're continuously, you know, R&Ding lots and lots of uses around machine learning, specifically kind of computer vision analysis of video-based content that we work with. So pulling out things like if we've got sort of, you know, similar pieces of content across multiple different organizations, we can look at how much variation there is between them in a really kind of objective way, analyzing things like team communication using natural language processing, and then actually analyzing weaknesses on an individual level. So if someone's, you know, particularly poor at breaking bad news, or you know, their communication style is perhaps a little bit abrupt, looking at how we can sort of pull that out. I think on the you know, the VR and AR side is super interesting. The bits again we tend to get most excited on with that actually again is the sort of how we can pull out more analytics from those platforms. So a lot of the newer headsets in VR and AR, we look at things like eye tracking and how accurate the hand and sort of biometric data is that we can collect and add into our system. And I think on that sort of VR side, we're going to see a kind of convergence across virtual and augmented reality. So it, you know, I think if you look at what sort of Facebook are doing with the Oculus headsets, and they've just actually posted a blog article over the Christmas period talking about what they're doing over the next kind of 12 months, which very much talks about integrating augmented reality into new headsets and how they can do things like capturing facial movements and projecting that onto avatars in virtual spaces. I think that's going to be really exciting and interesting, because I think one of the things with VR in particular that's a limitation at present is not every single person obviously has a VR headset. And when you do go into a virtual environment, the element of presence can be limited because of the quality of the virtual environment, or because the people that you're trying to communicate with in a sort of multiplayer or social setting are sort of generic avatars rather than being very realistic humans. So I think the things we're most excited about are certainly the AI components around the data analysis, but also looking at how we can make learning really fun and exciting for as many people as possible.
That's fantastic. And one of the questions I had was around, you know, what Verti's goals are going forward. So obviously you had a tremendous end to 2020 with, you know, Time magazine picking Verti out as one of the best inventions of 2020. What's kind of your focus for 2021?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're continuously kind of grateful for all the kind of traction and stuff we've had in quite a short space of time. So we're really just a sort of 2-year-old company. We launched really our main product only around about kind of 18 months ago or so, and we've scaled up very, very quickly with a team which grew from kind of 4 people to 24 people in a really short space of time. So I guess, for us, it's about how we can help as many people as possible in as fast a time as possible, really, and hit our mission of improving human performance in every kind of workplace setting. Specifically, for 2021, we're going to be kind of like doubling or trebling our team size, which is going to be quite exciting and also slightly scary to make sure we maintain our kind of company culture and continue to help our customers as much as possible. We are bringing some new products to market and optimizing and tweaking our existing system. So again, we're collecting as much unique data and really helping to solve problems for our customers as best we can. And then, I mean, we as a company are probably a little bit weird in that, from day one, we've always sort of optimized for, I suppose, the US market. So although we are based in Bristol in the UK, that's where our tech team are and our kind of EMEA head offices. We've also got offices in Houston and California in the US. And so really we're looking to continue to scale into the United States as well as internationally. So we're just doing a couple of really exciting partnerships, which are going to sort of push us into UAE and APAC and things like that as well. So really kind of scaling up is our main focus, as well as bringing some new really exciting products to market.
And that's, I remember my previous question now, talking about partnerships. So I was interested to know where, if you have someone using Verti, they become aware of a weakness in their own skill set. So like we were talking about before, perhaps it's that delivery of bad news, communication skills. Does Verti also deliver the actual follow-on content, or do you partner with other people to, pull together a sort of training plan therein afterwards as well?
Yeah, really, really great question. So, I mean, right back at the beginning of when I founded the company, I obviously, as every good entrepreneur should do, is obviously speak to your kind of customers, make sure you're actually solving a problem for them. And one of the key things that we kind of figured out was people's training needs in every single organization, whether it's in healthcare or outside, it is completely unique. And people actually want ownership of how they deliver training. And I think, in any sector, whether it's higher education, whether it's schools or colleges, VocTech type training, or medical training as we are doing, the people who deliver that training are often incredibly creative and are very focused on good learning pedagogy and how people learn. So the way that we sort of engage with people is we, outside of the tech, have learning and development experts, strategy experts, where we sit down with those folks and we say, okay, what are you looking to achieve? What offers good return on investment for you? And then our tech system actually has kind of creation facilities built into it. So our customers can actually create and manage their own content in addition to any generic off-the-shelf content that we have. And that's really exciting because it often, it continues to kind of blow my mind just how creative a lot of the trainers and educators are. And it is really exciting being able to kind of facilitate that through a platform like we've built. So, I mean, there's so much kind of going on our platform. I don't know half of probably what's going on outside of our product team. But, some of the things that our customers are creating are just absolutely amazing. So, I mean, although healthcare is very much our sort of primary market at the moment, we do quite a bit of work outside as well. So just as an example, we had a couple of kind of secondary schools in the UK approach us around different aspects, and we said, well, okay, we're mainly kind of focused on healthcare, but we're very happy to kind of onboard you and get some kind of pilot data and test data and see what, how we can help and if we can help. And the use cases there were really interesting. So that was around kind of actually teacher training, where teachers would normally kind of sit in a classroom and observe classes, or, they might actually only find difficult students or, people being rude or aggressive to them when they start on their first day. So again, it kind of fitted in with our ethos of how can we scale and repetitively educate people around infrequent but hazardous events. So that was really cool, and we hadn't really thought about doing that, and that's now kind of scaled up. And that kind of way of I suppose not just selling like a sort of SaaS piece of technology, but actually partnering with our customers and letting them take ownership of that content has proved really, really powerful. So we work with both customers to help them create content, but also kind of third parties who might be delivering existing in-person training to organizations who want to kind of either differentiate their revenue streams or just meet the impossibility of delivering in-person training in the current environment, and we can kind of switch that over and put it on. And one of the things actually that I saw has launched this week from one of those third parties is a just awesome piece of kind of mindfulness training content, actually, which was delivered by a former RAF helicopter pilot, where it's about teaching high-performing individuals in the corporate or healthcare setting how to be mindful, how to deal with kind of stress and resilience. And that's delivered, again, through the platform, just with content that's been created by them. So super scalable, super exciting on that partnership side.
On the note of books, so just as we wrap up, I like to ask all of our podcast guests if there's anything they have read or, any projects or people that, have inspired your way of thinking that you'd like to share, either around what you do or just personal interests as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, where to start with this? And so I'm a massive reader, basically. So I try and get through a couple of books a month if I can. For me, I think certainly over the Christmas period, one of the, the key books that I sort of picked up was one called the Lombardy Rules, which is actually one of our kind of required reading, basically, at Verti. So that's actually for Vince Lombardi is the kind of head coach of the NFL team, the Green Bay Packers, from their kind of heyday. Just a fantastic take on how team members and teams should kind of approach things, and it's not just about kind of sports. It's a really quick, accessible book which just gives some really good lessons on how you should deal with kind of adversity, or how you should aim for things in your day-to-day life. So that's something that I will always kind of pick up and go back to. I think other things that I kind of go to on a kind of like regular basis, things like Sam Walton's Made in America. So Sam Walton is the founder of Walmart in the US. And so I try and mix up kind of, I guess, practical business books with kind of biographical type things. So that's quite a chunky book. I think it's about 800 to 1,000 pages with very small text. But it's really interesting.
So it's the Walmart model of getting value for your money. So you have to have the most of it.
Exactly right. It's and it's absolutely fascinating, and I'd highly recommend anyone, if you're an avid reader, mix things up between kind of autobiographies to kind of learn from others as kind of virtual mentors almost, as well as the kind of more practical businessy books. And then on the kind of geeky side, after. I'm trying to get back into more kind of pleasurable or kind of fiction reading as well. So I've just started reading The Expanse after seeing some of the TV show on Amazon Prime, which is a pretty awesome sort of sci-fi episodic book series, which is identical to the TV show and is quite an enjoyable read as well. So I'm not just reading business books.
Fantastic. Yes, I've just picked up The Testaments, which is the follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale, which last night I was kind of like, do I watch the news, which seems quite dystopian, or read this dystopian novel, which was quite a strange situation to be in. But, well, that's absolutely fantastic. It's always good to share some third books out. Alex, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fascinating to get to know what you're up to, and hopefully everyone listening in will have a think about, how they may be able to work alongside the Verti mission. Yeah, it's a great mission to be involved with, and we wish you very well for the rest of 2021.
No, thank you so much. And likewise, hopefully 2021 gets back to normal as soon as possible.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be very good.
Thanks, Sophie. Really appreciate it.
Well, that's all for this week. Thank you so much again to Alex for all of his book recommendations and thoughts on keeping things simple when it comes to the mission of Tech for Good. Don't forget, if you want to bring an idea to fruition in the area of skills development supported through technology, you can check out Ufi VocTech Trust Seed Fund, which aims to create a pipeline of new digital vocational learning solutions by supporting innovative and creative projects at an early stage of development. The VocTech Seed awards grant funding of between £15,000 and £50,000 for projects of between 3 and 12 months duration. Funding is to support the development of early stage ideas, small scale testing, proof of concept work, and the development of strategies to scale once UFI funding has ended. And the UFI team say they can support ideas for new tech, new markets, new communities of learners, with the emphasis there obviously being on new, and that they are okay with risk. If that sounds like something you're interested in, head over to the UFI website during January 2021 at ufi.co.uk/funding to check out all the deadlines and other details. To get you inspired, here's Dr. Alex Young talking about his earlier project and UFI collaboration, which was called Tripping the Thames, which tested out some of their earlier training technologies across the transport sector.
We got sort of invited to kind of participate in a UFI project that had been set up and identified by a sort of a teaching or training strategist who was looking particularly at how you can more quickly and more effectively train river masters and people who kind of moor and sail boats up and down the Thames kind of commercially. I had no clue about sort of, the rules or regulations around the Thames. I had no clue about how people learnt to become kind of harbour masters or sail boats around the Thames. And it was really, really interesting process, actually. So we got invited by the team at UFI to do this project, which was fantastic. Just sort of long story short, there's a heck of a lot of kind of boating accidents on the river, and rivers, I should say, kind of internationally. And the way that people are trained typically is they get given basically what are kind of like flashcards or maps with sort of like little pictures attached to them. So pictures of the bridges, pictures of the different kind of curvatures of the river, and things like this. And in some cases, not even videos. So a little bit like, a London cabbie learning like the knowledge. They get sort of sent this out. They've just got to sit down and learn it, or actually go out physically on a boat and sort of practice remembering things and thinking, okay, this is the breach, where the breach is kind of the portion of the river. And this is how effective our training was. I can now remember all this stuff that I didn't have a clue about. Yeah. So it was really interesting because what they would then do is go into an exam, which was an in-person assessment. And if they didn't pass it, they had to resit it, repay for it, or they couldn't get their kind of commercial license to go up and down the Thames. So what we did was we took a 360 video camera out, luckily on a very sunny day, so it's actually quite fun and exciting to be on it. Recorded probably, I think, almost 3/4 of the entirety of the Thames, going through kind of each of the different bridges, looking at the landmarks and things like that. Made that kind of interactive with our platform, both in a sort of virtual reality setting, but also augmented reality. So you had a kind of just-in-time training element when you were actually on a boat, and then did a kind of mini study looking at a kind of cohort of learners who use the traditional kind of, I suppose, text or image-based learning, and then those that were sort of immersed in a simulated environment. And again, the kind of knowledge retention, the pass marks, and the engagement for the learners using our type of system was significantly better. And that was really cool because, again, it kind of fitted into projects that we take on where it's quite a sort of antiquated way of learning something, either practical but something that is infrequent, potentially hazardous, where we know we can offer a lot of return on investment for. And it was really sort of getting a lot of that initial data. And so, yeah, I mean, things like, transport. We've done a little bit of work with kind of people like sort of Transport for London, and recorded some things in, on the tube before lockdown around training for security teams down on the tube and things like that. So really, really interesting stuff. And that was a really fun project, which we're just actually in the process of kind of picking back up as one of our kind of key things for 2021.
That's very cool. What a cool job to be able to go up and down the Thames doing recordings and turning it into something so useful as well.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, I've got to say, I've never been all the way along the Thames, and it was actually like really, really fun. And as someone who's been around London just an absolute ton, it was very interesting. Whenever I now go over a bridge that crosses the river, I've had some weird thing embedded in me where I'm like, okay, this is the King's Reach breach of the river, and I'd only sort of looked through the training a couple of times. So hopefully for the harbour masters who went through that training, it's embedded and stuck with them up till now as well.
Yeah, and if anyone else is listening, definitely recommend the Peter Ackroyd book on the Thames. Really fascinating as well. So a little aside there. Now, that really is it for this week. So stay safe, everyone, and check back in soon for our next episode on the podcast on student recruitment and admissions. Bye-bye.